Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is a prep coach. Today's guest is Jeffrey Sue. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So, Jeff, I'm really looking forward to just learning a little bit more about you, getting into your backstory, bodybuilding and coaching. Before we get to that point, I would like to know, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Of all time. Geez, I mean, you can't, not put Arnold on that list. Jay Cutler, for sure, because, he grew up a couple towns away from my hometown of Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. He was in Sterling and he trained out in Worcester, which are very close towns, right? Also Dexter Jackson. I would say Arnold, Jay, and Dexter.
Okay, awesome, man. That's a good three right there. Now, at what age did you start lifting weights, Jeff? And why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
Probably like 13 or 14. And it was just with my dad in the basement, because we used to watch the Rocky movies, Rambo, and, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And my dad was big into working out, so he got me into it. So we'd work out together.
Okay, very cool, man. Okay, so you kind of mentioned growing up in Massachusetts, but talk a little bit more about like your childhood, your upbringing. Did you play sports? Were you into academics? What was your home life like? Just paint that picture a little bit for us.
Sure. Yeah. So my parents are Taiwanese immigrants, from Taiwan, off the coast of China. And so I grew up, in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, a very affluent, very white suburb and town. And so obviously I encountered a little bit of racism here and there growing up, in middle school. Everyone hated middle school, So I think that, and my parents being very demanding, the typical Asian stereotype type of parents, I kind of got pressure on both sides, like being in school, going home, everything was just like, oh, you're not good enough, you're different, you got to be better and all of that, right? So that, combined with being an overweight kid, I had a lot of, self-esteem issues, insecurities, and it's taken me pretty much all of my life to slowly shed those skins. I'm 39 now, and I'm still working on stuff after, my obsession with bodybuilding has faded. Now it's like a business obsession, all of that. But it all started in childhood, I would say, growing up in that environment.
Okay, now, first of all, some things I want to pull out of what you just shared with us, Jeff. Now, I'm assuming, and if I'm wrong, correct me, I'm assuming your parents came to the United States just to better their lives and to better their children's lives. Is that fair to say? If not, why did they come over here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was the whole thing. They came over here early. They went to college here, actually, in the University of Missouri. So they were here for a while, and so they got acclimated to the culture and everything like that fairly quickly before they had me.
Okay. And do you have any siblings, or are you an only child?
I have a brother. I have a brother that's 6 years younger than me. His name is Richard, and he owns a dispensary in Boston.
Okay, cool. There you go. Hey, you know what? I'm sure he's probably doing pretty well for himself, isn't he?
He is. Yeah, he turned weed into a business, which is just as appalling as me turning bodybuilding into a business in our parents' eyes.
Yeah, I'm sure, man. I'm sure. Okay, now, with again, kind of like with the Asian culture, I know, because I've had a lot of people with that background on the podcast, and obviously just going through life, you meet different people of that culture, and time again, it's kind of the story that you just shared. The academics are stressed. You're expected to become like a doctor or a chiropractor or a dentist, like right? I mean, that's kind of like what's the expectation now. How did you said that you felt some pressure from your parents in terms of the academics and kind of being pushed in that direction to be something or make something of yourself. How did you deal with that pressure specifically from your parents and the academic pressure when you're younger? Was that hard for you to kind of carry that pressure?
Of course it was. I mean, you only have a couple options, growing up in a household like that. Like you said, doctor, lawyer, finance, There's no like art or music or whatever. Well, there's a little bit of music. There's piano or violin, and this all sounds so stereotypical, maybe to some listeners, that it's almost like a joke, but it really is what Asian culture is like. And so I got into finance. I went to a business school called Bentley University in Waltham, Massachusetts. I worked in corporate finance for about 8 years. I returned to Bentley for my MBA in 2016. And at that moment, I had already been coaching for several years then. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go back to corporate. I'm just going to try to make this coaching thing work. And so at that point, I called it and I decided to go off and make this thing happen. And I did.
Right. So. Okay. Now, with your parents' expectations for you and your brother, but obviously we're talking about you, so specifically you, did you ever at any point in your life, whether, when you were a kid or even maybe when you were a young adult, did you push back on your parents? Did that kind of create a schism or a wedge between you and your parents' relationships, or not so much?
There was always a lot of tension in the household. Discipline was very physical, when we were young. I think that ended, after I finished middle school. So I was considered more so of an adult when I was 16, 18, in high school. So that sort of physical punishment ended. But yeah, there was always conflict because of, the bodybuilding and the obsession with bodybuilding, which took hold, in high school. And my parents felt like I was wasting my time on the forums and working out 2-3 hours a day or something. But I still maintained, my academics. I still did everything they wanted me to do or what I thought I should be doing. So the conflict wasn't too bad.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about, now did you, once you got into high school, obviously you had your parents' expectations of what they wanted you to do or be. Did you, and I want to just step outside of the bodybuilding realm just for a minute here. We're going to get into all that for a lengthy conversation. But before we do, outside of your parents' expectations for what they wanted you to be or do after high school, and outside of the bodybuilding stuff, did you have any ideas of what you want to do or be when you got older? Or was it really all centered around kind of the bodybuilding fitness stuff at that age?
I just wanted to look good and feel good and be respected and be wanted and be a part of society in a sense that I was producing something and making a difference. And I also wanted to make a lot of money. That was what was attractive about finance. And, that's another thing about Asian culture is that there's a lot of importance on financial wealth. Materialism is a huge part of Asian culture. But, I feel like myself and many other first generation children quickly see that the American dream that my parents had is completely different than what's the reality when you actually do it. A lot of, I feel like first generation Asian children are cracking under that pressure and discovering that the wealth and the prestige and all that stuff that you're taught to chase as a kid isn't all cracked up as what it's what you're told as a kid. So finding my passion in bodybuilding and then developing a coaching business has made me far happier than I was in the corporate world.
Right. Excellent. Okay. So you graduate high school, you go off to college. Talk us through that a little bit, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, at Bentley, I knew it was just like a thing that I had to do. Like college was like, you just got to go to college. I really hated my time there, to be honest. I was dating this girl that was at NYU, and every weekend, her and we would switch off taking the Greyhound bus, or Peter Pan bus, or whatever, to go visit each other. So I didn't really have much of a campus life. The friends that I did make, like I didn't go to any parties. I just went to class and I went to the gym. And I made friends with other guys that did the same thing, went to class and went to the gym. And so my college experience was different in that sense, that I was kind of a antisocial type of person, just getting through what I had to get through.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So you graduate from college, and then did you immediately go into corporate finance after your undergraduate degree was completed?
Yeah, I started working for a company in Waltham. They ran a bunch of kidney dialysis clinics. And so I got into healthcare finance. And then from there, I jumped around to 2 other jobs. I worked for companies like TJX, they own TJ Maxx and Marshalls. And I also worked for Reebok. And I also worked for Staples, the office store, for a little bit before they had a failed merger. And at that point, I went to grad school.
Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. Now let's start. We're going to come back. I'm going to kind of interlace some of your life stuff and the bodybuilding stuff, because I want to dig a little bit deeper, but I want to make sure we kind of get the full picture here. So you start training at 13 or 14 years old in terms of kind of like lifting weights. When were you first exposed to bodybuilding? How were you exposed to it? And then why do you feel like bodybuilding specifically over maybe like powerlifting or strongman or something like that really sucked you in and pulled you in and attracted you as a young teenager?
Geez, I mean, I was first exposed to it by going on forums and just looking up, like, how to build muscle or whatever. And you see photos of, like Jay and Dexter and Marcus Rule and Arnold. And then, I saw Pumping Iron. Every guy can remember the first time they saw Pumping Iron. And then you start getting into, the Ronnie Coleman videos and the Jay Cutler, A Cut Above, like those DVDs. And then, after that, of course, the forums took off in like the late 90s. Then you had YouTube and all that stuff feeding all of this, right? Social media later on. But, what attracted me to it was just, you see like Arnold take his shirt off in a movie, or you see Sly Stallone. You're just like, God, I want to look like that guy. I want to be that guy. It's so cool. All the women must love him. And then you really realize that, when you get big, it's just all the men that, give you attention. It's not the women.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So then, when did you like start training like a bodybuilder then? Was that still in high school, Jeff?
No, I wouldn't say any of my training in high school or college, or even the first couple of years out of college, could be labeled bodybuilding training. I didn't get into this type of training, like training properly with proper nutrition and over-the-counter supplementation like creatine, glutamine, all that stuff, until I was about 25.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So okay, yeah, I was just working out, just doing curls and bench pressing and push-ups and running.
Okay. Okay. Now you said that you were overweight as a kid. At some point, did the strength training kind of help you lose some weight? Did you kind of at least like lean up in high school and college, or not so much?
No, absolutely. When I was an 8th grader, I was 180 something pounds. And then in high school, I got onto the track team and the cross country team, and I was weightlifting, but I also developed an eating disorder. And so I was anorexic and bulimic throughout high school and most of college. So when I graduated college, I still remember I was 128 pounds as a senior. And I'm not that tall. I'm like 5'8", but still 128 at 5'8" as a man is very, very small.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you just brought up something else. So can you just talk a little bit more about the eating disorder stuff? Because I had a female guest on not too long ago, and she had brought this up, and I had said, hey, since I was probably in middle school, I've had some eating issues and body image issues. And I said, we hear a lot about it in terms of females, but you probably talk to 90% of people that are competitive bodybuilders, and they've got some sort of, eating disorder, or they did, or some sort of body image issue. So will you expand on the eating disorders and like, what was life like for you, going through that?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely something I held in secrecy. I don't think any of my close friends from back in the day would listen to this podcast, but a lot of my friends don't know. I would say my parents really didn't know, or maybe they did and didn't want to say anything, or they didn't understand. But yeah, only my girlfriend at the time knew what I was dealing with. Okay. But eating disorders in general, like as a coach, I've seen this, happen in both men and women. It's not just a female issue or a female struggle. I know a lot of male bodybuilders that suffer from eating disorders, whether it's your classic anorexia, bulimia type of mindset when you're cutting or in an off season, they're purging, or they're chewing food and spitting it out. Mainly for men, I would say it's the binge eating, whether they purge or not. You know, it's manly to be able to take down an entire pizza or eat like a 120-ounce tomahawk, you know, but that's binge eating. And then, you know, coupled with constant body checking, you know, just looking at yourself like at every reflective surface, taking progress photos, but that's just another form of body checking. You can see this when people, both men and women, they take progress photos almost every day. It's like, how are you making progress day to day? Like, take it with once a month or every other month. You know, it doesn't make sense to take pictures every day. It's an illness, and you can see that on social media now.
Right. And so, have you overcome those eating disorders, or is it going to be, do you feel like something you're going to live with the rest of your life, Jeff?
I haven't had any issues with food now since I was 27. I would say 26 or 27 when I got into, you know, competing. Ever since then, I've never had an episode of bulimia. Certainly haven't been anorexic. I'm like 210 now at 5'8". Binge eating was something that I struggled with, you know, when I was competing. But as I've grown older and my digestion has sort of, you know, mellowed out, I can't put down 2 Five Guys burgers anymore and a shake and not walk away feeling like shit. So that has calmed that down. But I think the type A personality, the control aspect that an eating disorder gives you and what bodybuilding gives you as well, that is still part of me. And I've channeled that into growing my coaching business. And I don't think that will ever leave me.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Now, why don't you talk about when you started to train like a bodybuilder, train for bodybuilding, and then when did you decide, hey, I'm gonna actually step on stage and do this thing? Like, walk us through those early bodybuilding experiences.
Yeah. So, you know, once I discovered the forums, I was posting and I was really into nutrition. Of course, I was obsessed with it because of the eating disorders. A lot of people with eating disorders tend to obsess over nutrition. They tend to be very well educated in nutrition as well. They just misapply it. But I was posting on, I think, Professional Muscle, RX Muscle, and bodybuilding.com. And this guy, Jason Theobald, which a lot of people may know as Scooby Snacks, he offered to help me. He was like, dude, you look like you're hurting. Let me help you for free for a year. I'm a coach. I could help you turn things around. Maybe you can compete one day. And for some reason, I just trusted him. I've never met the guy before. He was literally just a screen name on a forum. And we started emailing, and we would email every day. He became like my internet friend. And, you know, I started coaching with him. He made a website. I was like his third client at the time. And I stuck with him for a year. And then he was like, do you want to become an official client? And I said, yeah. So he charged me $100 a month. I had my corporate job then. I could easily afford it. And I was like, I want to compete one day. And so, you know, 2 years into it, we did a contest prep. And, you know, I did the Jay Cutler Classic in Boston. Granted, I placed second out of 3 people. That's a lightweight. But I was on stage at like 152.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Now, did you enjoy the process of prepping and competing and being on stage and going through the posing and stuff that first time, or was it a little were you a little leery of all that in the beginning?
No, I loved it. I loved it. When I put on those trunks, I was like, I'm a bodybuilder now, you know, even though I was 150 pounds. And being on stage, I wasn't nervous at all. I think I posed to some like old like classic jazz type song. It was some weird song that I was obsessed with at the time, and I played it on stage, and people were probably like, what is this guy on? But I had fun with it.
Cool. Awesome. Now, and Jason, he's been on the podcast, super cool guy, very, very, very educated and smart.
Yes.
Now, after that first show, why don't you just walk us through like some of your, if you want to just, you know, do some of your highlights in terms of your competing, like walk us through some of your competition history, Jeff.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously I'm not like a very well-known bodybuilder, but, you know, I competed, you know, in the Boston shows, New England's, Jay Cutler Classic. I won the overall at like a powerhouse classic show in Connecticut. I placed second as a light heavy to Nate Tilo actually in 2019 at the Jay Cutler Classic. I went to Junior USA's in 2019 as well. Unfortunately, there were only 3 guys in my class. It was me, Austin Stout, who you may know, and someone else who was a client of Andrew Vu's, and I got third. so I got last place at Junior USA's. But I beat my look, and I felt great. I was healthy, and that was the last time I competed, was 2019.
Okay, now how did competing in bodybuilding, and then we're going to start getting into coaching and stuff, but how did kind of like, I guess, just the lifestyle of bodybuilding and competing in bodybuilding and kind of having that identity as a bodybuilder, how did that kind of help you in a positive sense? Because you said you were kind of pushed pretty hard and you had a lot of maybe stress and carrying around some weights when you were younger because of different pressures and struggles that you had to go through. But how did bodybuilding give you an identity, and how did it kind of help you, again, in a positive sense, to maybe break through some of the younger years of your life, some of those struggles?
Well, yeah, bodybuilding does teach you resiliency. It can be a lonely sport at times because you're the one doing it. It's not a team sport. So it teaches you to be independent, reliant on yourself. It teaches you organization. Obviously, you need to be prepared for a lot of situations. And it teaches you that, a lot of great things can come from pain. And it teaches you to embrace that pain and go through it. I think that's what separates a lot of bodybuilders from people who just work out for fun, is because when you're under, 400, 500 pound squat, you got to have some deep, dark pain, in your heart to burden that physical load and take that squat deep. A lot of us who train, it's therapy, so there was a lot of positivity that came from that. I just think that, it was, being 39 now and reflecting on my love and obsession for bodybuilding, that, it was time to let it go. And that's why I let it go in 2019, because it no longer served me in the way that it did in the past.
Now, I want to ask you this. Do you feel like, yes, you gained a lot of positivity from bodybuilding, but also do you feel like maybe, I don't necessarily know how to word it, but there's a lot of negativity within bodybuilding as well. Not necessarily the actual, lifestyle, but once you kind of get into social media and you start kind of being engulfed and consumed by bodybuilding and bodybuilders and bodybuilding content, like, it can be very toxic. It can be very negative. I guess that's kind of the best way I can put it. And I feel like because of this podcast, and I compete in bodybuilding myself, and most of the people I follow on Instagram are bodybuilders, like, at times in my life, I've been consumed by bodybuilding because I've allowed it to consume me. And I'm kind of at a point right now, to be really transparent with you and everybody that's watching, listening. I'm kind of at a point right now, and there's been some different ebbs and flows in my own life, Jeff, but I'm kind of at a point right now where it's like, man, like, when you consume so much bodybuilding, like, for me, it really gets really toxic, and it just kind of like, I don't feel like it's necessarily healthy or good for me personally. Did you kind of go through that? Do you see other people going through that as well?
I completely agree with that, especially with the social media aspect on top of it. It's because, social media, as we know, is run off of an algorithm. So it's like whatever you look at, they show you more of. Okay. So pretty much like your entire world, when you log on, becomes what you seek, and you see nothing else. And so I remember, this was pretty funny. I was down in Newport, Rhode Island on a date once, and I was walking down the street with this girl. And I just thought to myself, I was just like, I wonder if Chris Bumstead or Jay Cutler appeared on the street right now, how many people here would know who they were? Not just, oh, that's a pretty muscular big dude right there, but like know who they were. And then I was like, probably nobody. Like, because everyone here is probably like, some like trust fund manager, or they're into boating or cars or whatever, it's like a completely different crowd. And so when you think about bodybuilding and how much time and money and effort and health risks that, people who are very serious about bodybuilding take, and they skirt all other responsibilities in unhealthy ways. And some people will do that. they put aside education, they get like, you know, an easy job, or they're doing stuff online, like selling random things or whatever. Okay. That to feed this bodybuilding thing, that becomes an unhealthy obsession. Because at the end of the day, this is just a meat suit that we're all wearing. You know, like there's a big world out there, so many people and experiences and things to try. And we're just living every day out of Tupperware and going to the gym. It's a very small life. You know, when you think of it that way, it's kind of sad. That's how I see it now.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about you transitioning then from competing and kind of being in the corporate world to saying, hey, I'm going to do this coaching thing full on, full bore, full time. I'm going all in. Like, walk us through the mindset of that, and then walk us through like the actual practical steps that you took to kind of go all in with the coaching, because I think everything in life starts with our mindset, and usually we're thinking way ahead of things before we actually take those steps to kind of go into what could be, you know, uncomfortable or a little bit of a risk. So walk us through that, Jeff, please.
Yeah. Well, when I was sitting in the corporate world, you know, the idea of coaching was never to build a business or to make money or anything like that. I just loved bodybuilding, and I was posting about my own diet and preps and things like that. I was just showing what I was doing because, you know, that's what you do on social media, right? You post your pictures, and people would comment and ask questions, and I'd get DMs, and, you know, it kind of built from there. Every show I did, I'd make friends, and, you know, people around here started to know my name and know me a little bit. And so I started helping some friends, friends of friends, for free, and eventually it started charging like $50 a month. And it got to a point where I was making $3,000, $4,000 extra a month on top of my salary. And I was like, huh, this is really cool. Like, this could be a business. And then it actually did become a business because I got a 1099 for PayPal one year for taxes. I was like, fuck, I didn't accrue for taxes. I got to pay taxes now. And so that quickly got me linked up with a CPA to resolve that mess. But then I was just like, you know, in the corporate world, you're just a cog. It doesn't matter what level you're at, you're replaceable. You know, I wanted to kind of take things into my own hands. Obviously, that control, right, that I sought. So I did this, and you know, I built the business up to about 50, 60 grand of revenue. And at that point, I was like, you know what, I'm going to make this thing happen. And so I let go of the corporate job. I moved home with my parents. That was when I went to grad school, and I went full time, and I did personal training and coaching at the time. And I had about 20-ish clients. And then it just grew from there.
Okay. Now, since you got your the kind of the coaching business off the ground and going, why did you decide to go back to get your or to continue education?
Well, I wanted something in my back pocket, and because I felt like I wasn't as skilled as I could be in the corporate world. So at that point, I was like, why not do both? Get this degree just in case if this coaching thing doesn't go through, I will then have a degree to fall back on.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. So then I want you to walk us through some of the practical steps of growing a coaching business, okay? Because that's kind of like, you know, if you go by what social media says, that's kind of like everybody's dream job, full-time bodybuilder, full-time online coach. But, you know, walk us through the practical steps. How did you go from, you know, just competing and not being an IFBB pro, not being a top NPC athlete, but still growing a very successful online coaching business and prep business?
Yeah. Well, you know, I never sought out to be a prep coach either. I wanted to help people lose weight and get healthy. But I still remember writing the mission statement for my company. And I was like, you know, I wanted to use bodybuilding, the principles of bodybuilding, but apply them across a spectrum of fitness. So I never posted, you know, a picture of myself from a show saying, train with me, you know, serious inquiries only, 5 spots left. Email me at jeffisshredded@gmail.com. You know, I never did that. All I did was I shared things that I was doing, and I explained why I was doing them and how, if you wanted to try this, it could help you. And that was my content. It was just free information. I'd read a book. I'd be like, oh, this is a really cool, chapter on, insulin sensitivity. And I would put it into my own words and maybe apply, a photo or show a glucometer or something. And I would post it as my own words. And I just kept doing that. And I just got more people asking questions and more people asking if I could help them. And over time, that's what grew it.
Now, did you have anybody like mentoring you, or have you had some mentors, whether that's, and I know Jason probably was a mentor along as a coach, but were there some people close or afar that kind of mentored you and kind of helped you move in the coaching direction, or was this all self-taught and self-built?
I would say the Jason Theobald was my mentor, whether he knew it or not, or whether he was doing it purposely or not. He was definitely my coach, because every show that I did, and I've done over like 8 shows, not too many, but 8 shows. Jason was my prep coach for every single one of them. And I started coaching with him. Like I said, we linked up in 2008, back when it was just forums. There was no, Facebook had just come out at that time, and there was no Instagram, I don't think. And so Jason, up to this day, me, Jason, and Jeff Black, we have a podcast together. We're business partners. We own the Physique Education Collective, and I help him, represent New Ethics. And so 2008 to now, that's a very, very long time. And so over time, I've absorbed things from him through his coaching with me, and just our day-to-day conversations, changes in his life, personal struggles he's been through. I asked him about personal struggles I've been through. I shared with him. And that to me is true mentoring. And so I've told everybody, and I'll tell you and your audience here on this podcast, that First Call Out Fitness, the way I run it today, is still how Jason did it in 2008, 2010. I just liked that business model and that approach so much that I've kept it the same. He has evolved and changed his processes in a way that he wants, but I've kept it exactly the way I loved it back then.
And so you don't have to give us any secrets, but what is that process that you're kind of referring to, Jeff, please?
The process is one-on-one coaching. It's just pure one-on-one attention. When someone's emailing me, it's me. It's not my assistant. It's not a ghostwriter. There's a whole bunch of weird, sleazy practices now that's going on in our industry. It's facilitated by a lot of these business coaches, that are encouraging coaches to, make $10,000 a month, grow your business, all this stuff. And, back when I started, it was never about making money and growing a business. It was about helping people and getting results and feeling good about myself that, I did that. I helped that person kick type 2 diabetes. I helped that woman relieve her PMS symptoms because of the knowledge that I had and applied. That was beyond any sort of money that people could pay me. And now people are just all about money. It's fucking flipped, And so that basic care, that customer relationship is what I'm talking about when I'm saying I'm keeping everything the same.
Now, with the First Call Out Fitness, is it just you, or do you have coaches underneath you?
So First Call Out Fitness, we have a little over 100 clients right now. As of this moment, we have 103. I have an assistant coach. Her name is Laura Goldstein. She asked to work for me, and I kept saying no, and she kept bothering me for like a good year. And I was like, no, you got to be a client first. She became a client. And then I was like, no, you got to mentor with me. And so she mentored with me. She jumped through every hoop that I put in front of her. And I was like, fine, I'll give you a chance. She's been working for me now for a year. She has over 40 clients. She's doing great. We just did taxes, and I'm sending her my tax documents. I was like, have I really paid you this much money in a year? And so it's just me and her. But any client that's under my care, Laura's not talking to. It's one-on-one with me. And then Laura's clients are her clients.
Right. Okay. Now, so what I'm trying to get at here is, like, you said that, you really still value that one-on-one time with your clients, and if a client is yours, they're communicating with you and not an assistant and all that. Now, how do you kind of, because when it's just you and you said you have Laura, so there's two of you now. With two people, there's a cap. I mean, there's a ceiling. You hear these, I mean, I've had them come on here. They say, you know, they're like one coach and they've got 150, 200 clients, which I don't even know how that's humanly possible. We won't go there. Maybe there's some practices that you were referring to that they're practicing. That's their business, not ours. But I want to dig a little bit deeper, because I love the fact that, you know, what you said about, hey, like if somebody's working with me, they're working with me, they're texting with me. It's one-on-one. That is very powerful. That is something that I think is healthy for all of us. We were made to connect, right?
Right.
So the flip side is, though, there's a cap and there's limitations to how many people you can help as one person or two people. So how do you, moving forward, if you do want to grow the business, do you have ideas? Do you have a vision of how you can still help people one-on-one, but continue to grow the business and then obviously help more people? What does that look like? How do you do that, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. I think, you know, if one coach is servicing 150, 200 people, that is literally impossible unless you're just giving out macros and not any other support. I think you could probably do it that way. But if you're texting people like I am, you're answering check-in emails and other questions from them on an unlimited basis weekly. I do work a lot of hours. Monday and Tuesdays are my busiest days. I'll work from 7 a.m. sometimes until 10 or 11 at night. And then on Wednesdays, I'm doing other podcasts. I'm doing other consults. Thursdays, I have mentorships. And so mentoring has been something new lately, I would say in the last couple of years. But to answer your question on how to build the business, you need to start having other arms of revenue that support your brand and mission statement, but they all feed into each other. So what I mean by this is Laura and I have the client side. I also have a mentorship program where I mentor coaches and I'm running through their cases and helping them solve their cases. Or I have a business mentorship where I help coaches with social media, budgeting, forecasting, taxation, because I have that MBA. And then I'm teaching classes, I'm hosting workshops. We have the live events, the Physique Education Collective. So all of these things feed into each other revenue arm and promotes a synergy in the brand.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, talk to me a little bit about the mentoring, because I see a lot of coaches on Instagram, you know, that are now promoting, they're taking on clients for the mentorship stuff, which, you know, I think that's great. I know Austin, he's been on the podcast, and I know he does that. A lot of the guys in your, I'll just say crew, they do the mentorship stuff. I see through Instagram. What does that look like for you? How can somebody who wants to, you know, maybe start the online coaching, get into an online business, how can they find the right mentorship group or mentor for them? What do they look for?
Yeah, I think, you know, the issue with the mentorships is that, like, just like anybody can be a coach, you know, you can do it one show, get on your smartphone and start offering coaching, right? Our industry is very, very low barrier to entry, but it's very, very high competition. All right. If we're talking about, you know, Porter's 5 forces of competition. But the mentorship side, you know, let's say, you know, a 4th grader could probably teach a 1st grader how to write, right? But a college doctorate student could probably teach better, right? So there's levels, right? There's big fish and little fish. So anybody can mentor. Anybody can pick a mentor. I think, you know, you need to look at, you know, what their tenure is, what their results have actually been. I think anybody who has been in this business for 5 years or under really has no idea what they're talking about, because times have been good. When times are good and you're eating good and you're nice and fat, that's a lot different when you start losing clients or the industry shifts or you're in tough times in business. That's what a true mentor knows, is good times and bad times and how to navigate those waters. Yeah. So be careful who you link up to and look for their results and their credentials first. That's what I would say.
Okay. how did you navigate 2020 and that whole situation business wise?
2020 was actually, I always preface it by saying, like, I know a lot of people suffered in 2020. A lot of businesses suffered and shut down. But for me, that was like one of my most profitable years. And that was the year that I pivoted to offering some business classes, because there were so many personal trainers left out in the cold wanting to switch into the online space. And that's also when a lot of prep coaches shifted to functional nutrition as well, to deal with issues like gut health and hormones and things like that. So I started teaching a class called The Business of Fitness, and it was all about marketing and social media presence and brand building. And, you know, some of these online classes, like one class, like earned a lifetime revenue so far, you're like, you know, from conception to now, of like over $50,000 on one class. And so 2020 was a huge shift between coaching to teaching and mentoring for me. And people asked me to do that. I didn't start doing that. They were like, can you do this, Jeff?
Cool. Now, social media. Talk to me a little bit about, and talk to the audience a little bit about, as a coach and as an athlete, how can you utilize social media to your benefit, but also to the benefit of building a business and doing it in an ethically positive way? Because I feel like that's the way you, Jeff, kind of want to operate and do operate.
Yeah, of course. I always tell people that social media is just like real life. It just happens much faster because everything's at your fingertips. You can move quickly across the world, basically, and connect with people across the world. So all the rules that apply in real life social interactions still apply online. And it's the people who try to skirt those traditional social rules, and they try to trick people and scam people and, you know, push things too fast. That's when things blow up on social media. But if you follow the rules of engagement in real life and you do that online, you can't go wrong. You know, you'll meet so many different people. You'll meet so many awesome personalities that social media can be so beneficial if you play it the right way.
Okay, what are a couple of ways that you can play it the right way in terms of social media?
So offer information for free. Give for free without any sort of transactional mindset. What I mean by that is, a lot of people will post and post, right? And they don't get a client. And they're like, fuck this. I don't want to post anymore. This sucks. You know, and they've only been at it for like a month. You need to be passionate about sharing information, sharing your experiences, and sharing it in a way that is helpful to other people. Don't just throw something out there because you think it's important. If you're trying to gain clients, think about who you want to serve and what they may be struggling with, and put out information that speaks to that struggle, and you'll have people come towards you. It's called inbound marketing versus outbound marketing. So outbound marketing is like an offer that you just throw out and say, oh, this is the best, you know, coaching offer ever out there. Work with me because I placed first at, you know, the NPC New England's or whatever. Everybody can do that. But if you take the time to think about, you know, all the people who comment and ask you questions, take time to look at their profiles, see who they are and what they're about. That's your audience. Those are the people who are now attentive to you, right? Attention is one of the first steps of social interaction before closing a deal. It's like dating, getting someone's attention before you sit across from them at a dinner table on a date. So how do you close that deal in business? You have to have that attention, attraction, and then you build the interaction, and then you close the deal. So by offering free information that hits at the heart of the people that you want to speak to, that's a great way to get their attention.
Now, if somebody wants to learn more about the business side of things, and they kind of want to take you up on some of the mentorship business stuff that you offer, where can they go to find more information about that, Jeff?
Just go on my Instagram at First Call Out Fitness. I have a bunch of classes that were previously taught live. It's like 12 hours worth of material with all the slides and supporting documents. I've been selling that for $500. And honestly, to this day, I've had over 600 coaches buy at least one class from that bundle.
Nice.
So it's been wildly successful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool, man. Okay. One other question about social media, then we're gonna start wrapping it up with a few other things I want to touch on. But
Sure.
now okay, so I think a lot of people fall into this trap on Instagram and some of the other social media platforms in terms of followers. Now, when I go to your Instagram, I mean, you've got like, I don't know, 5,000 some followers or something, right?
Yeah.
So people who don't necessarily know, they'd be like, oh, who's this guy? He doesn't have any followers. He's nobody, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
on the surface level, right?
Yeah.
That's, I think, how a lot of people that don't really know, that's what they think and see from
Yeah.
your Instagram because of your followers. Now, once you kind of get into the Instagram game and the social media game, you realize it's not necessarily the following that's important. It's the engagement, it's the interaction and all that, right? There's levels to it, just like the coaching levels that you talked about earlier.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit more about the followers, because obviously a lot of people buy their 75,000 followers and then they post a picture and they've got 2 likes, they have, a bunch of spam comments, and it's just a joke, right? But a lot of people don't realize that they see 75,000 followers like, wow, this guy's a social media influencer, they should coach me. Talk about that. Explain that to us a little bit more, please.
It's just that social media mindset of growing fast or faking it until you make it. You got to post the car, you got to post your trophies, you got to have the big following. It's all just fake. It's for nothing. And you go to these profiles and you look at the following, it's all like weird accounts, like out in like some other like random third world country. It was like the guy has like one photo of like a plant, and I'm like, that's a fake account. So myself, I only have 5,000 followers, and the other thing that I do is when I get like random followers who are like spam accounts or like other like business coaches that I look at their profile, it's just bullshit, I'll block them. Because I don't want people to look at my following and see like cam girls on it, business coaches, other spam bots or whatever. So I routinely will clean out my following. But like you said, it's about monetizing that following. So for example, with my class sale, I get a lot of people who DM me and they never follow me. It always says like, this person doesn't follow you. And they're like, Jeff, let me pay you $500 for your class bundle. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's my Venmo. Give me your email. Transaction made. I send it out. I don't follow them. They don't follow me. But that is what matters. It's like I'm actually making a living off of my 5,000 followers, versus just peacocking and saying that I have 80K and you make nothing from that.
Right. Yep. I just want to make sure we got that out there because, again, there's different levels to this whole social media stuff. Now, Jose Raymond, how did you come across him? How did you connect with him? Talk a little bit about Jose.
Well, Jose has been a judge at the local shows for years and years. I think he judged me when I first competed as that lightweight. And the funny thing, Jose made fun of me. He was like, you're a fucking idiot. Every single time you come up to me at these shows, you always shake my hand. You're like, oh, hey, my name's Jeff Sue. Hey, nice to meet you. He's like, I know who you fucking are. So I'm good friends with Nate because, in 2019, we competed together and there was like a lot of like social media, like drama, like, because I had just won the Powerhouse and I was like gloating from that. And it's like such an easy show, but I was like, oh yeah, I won, and I was making like a scene out of it. And so a lot of people didn't like that. So Nate was getting ready for the next show that I was doing. We were both going to do the New Englands or the Cutler or whatever. And they were like, Nate, you got to beat this guy. You got to shut him down. And so I met Nate backstage and we started talking and, we liked each other. We became friends. There was no animosity between us. Nate ended up winning. He won light heavies. I placed second and we've been friends since. And so I hit up Nate one day and I was like, Nate, like, because Nate was coached by Jose. And I was like, you think Jose would train me in person? I kind of need that in-person push. And Nate hooked it up and I, paid for a couple sessions with Jose. I loved it and been with him since.
Cool. What's something, I mean, it could be training wise, life wise, business wise, whatever, or a couple things, but what are a few things that you learned from Jose, specifically just spending time with him?
Jose is very, very humble, and he's good natured, and he has his head on straight. He doesn't like the social media game. He sees right through the bullshit. And he's called me out on some stuff in terms of like getting sucked into that, the comparison game, and like showing off success and things like that. And, you know, he's almost like a therapist sometimes. Like he just knows like where to hit and the questions to ask, and the comments that he says really makes me think. Like, for example, you know, I had, you know, a couple great years of business. So I bought this Porsche 911, you know, my dream car. I bought this car and I was showing it off on Instagram. He's like, don't do that shit. You know, he's like, you don't need to do that. Just focus on the clients, focus on your work. You don't need to do that social media lifestyle stuff. And I took that to heart, you know, and so I've been slowly like trying to, like I said, I'm still working on shedding those skins of being not good enough and comparing myself and proving myself to others, always having that underdog immigrant mindset. But I'm not the underdog anymore. You know, I'm a leader, I'm a business owner, I've got clients that look up to me. And Jose was just like, you don't need to do that anymore. You know, and that's probably one of the most meaningful things that anybody has ever said to me.
That's powerful, man. That's cool. And I can see Jose definitely saying that he's a straight shooter, man.
He is.
So we're gonna finish everything with kind of going back to the beginning. So your parents, you and your brother, it sounds like, have, I'm assuming, taken a completely different direction than your parents would have wanted you guys to take. Again, we're talking about you, so I just want to talk about you, not your brother. But for you, how do your parents view you now? I'm sure it was a struggle when you were doing the bodybuilding and you're kind of like on the come up, but now that they can see that you're successful the way that they would want you to be successful in terms of financially, right, and educationally, now how do they kind of view everything? And do you feel so much freer that you've kind of chosen your path and your route in your life, as opposed to going down the path or the route that your parents would have wanted you to go down?
Well, I'll answer the second question first, and that answer is 100%. I feel free. The only change that I apply to myself is my desire to keep working and building the business, and, you know, making a name for myself in the industry, because, you know, I'm not going to make a name for myself as a bodybuilder, but I can make a name for myself as a great coach for athletes of all kinds, competitors and Gen Pop, as a mentor and a teacher. Now, in terms of my parents and how they feel about things now, they're very, very happy. I mean, I got the graduate degree that they hoped that I would get. Obviously not from Harvard, but still, I got the graduate degree in business. You know, the money that I make now, I'm able to help my parents. Recently, their water heater broke, so that was $10,000. I could easily take that out, give it to my dad, and they could do that. I take care of their landscaping, the snow removal. I want to renovate their house. I help my mom with medical stuff. They're in their 70s now, on Social Security. So a lot of the cash that I make goes to my parents. And it makes me very happy to have to be in a position that I can do that and help the people that I love.
And so I want to finish up talking about what you've said a couple of times about shedding these skins from over the years, right? And, you know, kind of like the trying to prove yourself and the insecurities. Now being 39, walk us through a little bit, Jeff. I mean, have you gone to like therapy? Have you just done a lot of like personal like work and deep inner work? Like, how have you been able to shed some of these skins over the years to kind of continue to grow as an adult and as a human being?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in therapy. I have been for the last 2 years. I meet with a therapist once a week. I've done a lot of reading as well, you know, specifically books on like how to find happiness and balance. You know, like I was saying before, you know, my parents, you know, being immigrants, their struggle was a very, very visceral one, where they needed to escape a country and an economic environment to come to some place that was a little more fruitful with more opportunity. But my struggle isn't, you know, a lack of economic opportunity. My struggle is a lack of emotional development and a struggle of self-actualization. it's a much different struggle now because the basic needs are met, right? So it's like, what's your purpose? Like, why are you doing this for? Why are you working so hard? Why are you making this much money? Why? Right? So I'm trying to answer those questions. You know, I think I'm definitely not perfect. I still have my issues. I have problems maintaining relationships because I'm so busy that I fail to reach out to other people and I wait for them to come to me. And so that's something that I've been working on with my therapist. But in general, I'm far less narcissistic. I'm far less individualistic. I'm far less, having these illusions of grandeur where, like, in bodybuilding, you're like, oh, like I'm the best, I'm the biggest, strongest, whatever. I've shed those skins, and being older now, you're more in tune with your mortality, and you're more in tune with what really matters in life. And it's not that surface level stuff.
Powerful, man. Okay. We're going to wrap it up, end it right there. Jeff, before I do a quick outro and I let you go, if you have any final thoughts, any final words for us, or, anything that you want to leave with us, any shout outs, I'm going to turn it over to you. Make sure you give us your Instagram. Platform's yours. I'll do a quick outro and that'll be a wrap. So go for it, my man.
Okay. Yeah. So for anyone listening who wants to chat about coaching or business, you can send me a DM. First Call Fitness is my screen name on Instagram. I don't have a VA. So if you DM me, it is me answering back. I have a website, firstcallfitness.com. I'm on Facebook at Jeffrey Sue, and anything I post is public. So you can go ahead and read about clients or any other things that I share. Other than that, I have a podcast with Jason Theobald and Jeff Black called The Excellence Cartel. We actually record today at 3 p.m. And other than that, that's all I've got. My only parting advice is, do what makes you happy. Do what makes you really happy, not what you think other people will be happy about. Do what makes you happy. Cool. That's it.
Great way to end it. Thank you so much, Jeff. I'm going to do a quick outro and I'll let you go. Okay.
All right.
All right. All of you who are tuning into another episode of Behind the Muscle Podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. If you guys have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button in regards to Behind the Muscle Podcast on YouTube. And then please take this episode with Jeff, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Jeff, tag Behind the Muscle Podcast so that we know that you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.